Today, very, very, very happy to finally get Ryan Bensen and finally able to sit down with him. And we are going to just sit down, have a good chit chat, hopefully be informative, as we always try to be here. So, Ryan, could you tell me, because I think you've got like 17 letters after your name. I was like, what's this all about? Why do you have so many letters after your name?
Well, my main priority was always to try and get more letters behind my name than I have in it. So I've just been really following that path of adding as many designations as I can. So my background is I'm trained in litigation, and I'm a forensic accountant by trade. So in order to do that, I'm a professional accountant. So that's a CPA and CA. I have an MBA, and I also have a myriad number of other designations around business valuations, financial forensics, and fraud.
Okay, so aside from all of the accounting stuff, so I didn't know that you had an MBA as well. So that's actually really interesting. So not only are you accountancy, you do the litigation side. I mean, you do everything. What? How does someone even get to say, you know what? I've got the accountancy side now, and I know a lot about numbers. Now let me just go over here and do something else. Like, where did all of it start? When were you like, right, fuck it, let me do this?
Yeah, it's I'm in a weird in-between zone, and it's a bit of a gray area, and it's partly by accident and partly on purpose. When I started my professional career, I was actually in between choosing law and accounting as the stream that I wanted to follow, which is why I did do some law training. But the end decision was to point towards accounting because I thought it was a little bit more flexible in terms of where I could land eventually, my idea being an entrepreneur. And I followed along with that. And I thought, well, if I do accounting, then I can see how other businesses work. And therefore, I can take the best parts from each business and I'll create one myself and do it myself. So I did that. But the way that I did that was looking into the legal space and saying, okay, there's something called an expert witness, which is what I do primarily. And there's also back-end litigation strategy, which is how to tailor questions appropriately, how to depose witnesses, lead them through a chain of questions that will be informative and help to bring more information and evidence into the proceedings. And ideally, if I'm working for one party and we're looking for money, find the money.
Mm-hmm. So, because I see what you mean about it being a really weird gray area, because you've got the financial side, and of course, if you're married to someone, then you're going to need to do eventually a little bit of background checks, that kind of thing, just figure out how much money does this person really have, how much are they worth, and that's a lot of the financial side. But of course, like when you're talking about divorce hearings and so forth, I mean, that's obviously the law side. So it's really interesting how those two sort of merge together. And I mean, it's fascinating to me. I mean, when did you sort of see it? Because I know that you said that it was kind of by accident and by plan also, but did you sort of sit down and be like, hold on a second, there's almost a gap in the market here for you to really take hold and follow suit with? Or was it kind of like you were just there someday? What was the story behind that? Because that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I did. I started at PwC when I was starting my accounting training. And after that, I went into forensic accounting specifically. So you're integrating with lawyers a little bit more in that type of role. And at the time, I was doing insurance defense work. So on civil litigation claims, the insurance company would hire a forensic accountant to poke holes in, say, like a business interruption loss or something like that. But I didn't really care so much for that end of it. I liked I mean, I love civil litigation, but I didn't like business interruption. So I got into more contracts and commercial disputes, and I got into matrimonial where there's a business valuation element of it. And when I went out into my own practice and started myself, I decided to tailor it towards high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. So a very specific niche, because I understand how that market works and how ultra high net worth individuals conduct their finances and how high net worth individuals conduct their finances. So I specialize there, and I generally, I mean, I would say about 90% of my cases are in that space.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to being a high net worth individual, or even just being, because obviously we're talking about two different worlds, right? I see a lot of the time on YouTube, and just generally you're walking around, you're sat down somewhere at a restaurant and you hear some guys talking. It's like, hold on a second. Like, they're living in one world where in reality they're kind of poor, and then they're talking and still worried about, you know, even just something small like a prenup. And it's just like, hold on a second, bro. Like, chill out, relax. But how would you say the high net worth individuals, how or what would you look for with a high net worth individual from a forensic accounting perspective that you wouldn't necessarily assume that a just quote unquote normal person would do with their either taxes or something like that? What would be something that you would look for?
That's a great question. And I think it just depends on how you want to frame what we're looking at, right? So if you're looking at general matrimonial law, you sort of have the bucket of traditional employees. So those are fairly simple. They earn X amount of dollars, therefore they'll pay child support or spousal support of whatever the number is, right? When you start moving into high net worth individual world, it becomes more about entrepreneurism, right? So these people are generally business owners. More often than not, their spouses have been just stay-at-home mothers taking care of the children and the household affairs. And there's a substantial amount of gray area with respect to how do you value a business, right? So, you know, Michael, you're an entrepreneur. Someone might say your business is worth $3 million, and someone else might say it's worth 1 million. Who's right? Right? So it becomes a battle with respect to how do you quantify that value, and how do you articulate it in such a way that somebody is going to get it, which is really the tricky part.
And because obviously business is just one part of an entrepreneur's life, right? I mean, normally they'll have their main business, they'll have a couple of side businesses here and there, but then they'll also have like their investments, maybe even offshore accounts, that kind of thing. Is that something that, as you know, perhaps a younger entrepreneur, let's say net worth, I don't know, be reasonable, 150, 200K, is that having the offshore accounts and so forth is, I mean, obviously, again, it's going to be dependent naturally on the jurisdiction, where they're based, which country, yada, yada. But would you say that when it comes to the final hearing in a divorce, are you also looking at not just the business valuation, but also their assets?
Yeah, absolutely. Assets are looked at, their income is looked at. I mean, it's really just to try to get a full picture as to what's going on. But for somebody, I mean, for a young entrepreneur who's earning $150,000, I mean, are you going offshore with that? It doesn't really make sense, because the cost of doing it is so exorbitant. If you're going to go offshore and do it even somewhat legally, and try to make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed with respect to the IRS or to another tax agency, you would be crazy to do it at a 150K income. It's just not worth it. You're saving, $25,000 a year in tax, and you're exposing yourself to getting just destroyed.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, you must have had some cases where someone got absolutely wrecked. I'm imagining. I mean, what happened or just in fact, just tell me a couple of stories about what happened in those cases. I mean,
What kind of
imagine It's
What
crazy.
variety do you want here? I have stories from every genre that is possible.
Okay, let's talk about, because everyone loves a good horror story, right? So let's start with a horror story of just where someone just absolutely got drilled, and what they did wrong, and yeah, let's start with a horror story.
A horror story. Okay. So the worst thing that you can do as a man who owns a business is to start going through the separation process and then start changing the variables. So what I mean by that is when I'm looking at numbers, when I'm looking at a situation or a circumstance, my baseline is going to be what was sort of happening just prior to the marriage and splitting, and what is happening now, right? So your worst possible case situation is where you've got a guy, he owns a business, he's making $2 million, right? And this is a pretty accurate description of a case that I've worked on. He's making $2 million in his business, right? Then his wife says, I've had enough. I think he was having an affair or something, which seems to be the number one determinant in these things. And then he just tries to tank his income, right? To avoid having to pay alimony and support. So suddenly the business that was making $2 million a year is making basically nothing. The sales have disappeared, et cetera, et cetera. And when you look at this kind of thing, you have to look at it as an sort of impartial observer, right? So if you're going to make a move in a divorce case, or if you're going to make a move just in your personal life, you have to be saying to yourself, what are other people going to look at this and think, right? Because if they're going to think that this is totally bullshit and it makes no sense, maybe I've got a problem here because I haven't really defended myself appropriately. So I look at this and I go, that's weird. Okay, so the sales have dropped a lot. The company's not making really any money anymore. That's really bizarre. And this guy was in business with his brother. And from there, you kind of say, well, what could the possible reasons be? Because the explanation that I was given was, oh, a bunch of customers just all decided to leave at once and stop giving us their work because I don't know, but maybe it was because I was getting divorced or something, this person says. Okay, let's see. So I go through everything, and it was a manufacturing style business. So you look at the numbers and you kind of say, well, it looks like you're producing the same amount of product. So obviously the money's going somewhere, right? Because if you're making the same amount of product, but you're making 25% of the revenue that you were before, something is no longer making sense here. So from there, I started doing corporate searches on his family members to see if any corporations happened to pop up along the way. And surprise, his brother incorporated a company pretty much right after the divorce. And that company, we later determined, was essentially the sales company for the original one. And that's where all the money was going. So don't do that. There's your horror story.
Jesus. And then what? So, I mean, obviously, the implications of just setting up a new and incorporating a brand new business, that's, I mean, to me, that's just a ridiculous idea. But what would happen if, for example, maybe I'm thinking too much, not giving anyone any ideas, but what would happen if you set up a completely separate business, but many, many years in advance, prior to perhaps even getting married, and then have that business in someone else's name or something that you trust, that you can trust, and then from there start sort of funneling the funds through that older business? Would that sort of give you a red flag or something like that?
So what you're suggesting is somebody would set up a separate company prior to getting married in somebody else's name, and then put some component of profit from their operating company into this secondary or tertiary business.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would really find that unless it was obvious. If it was coming through and that company was paying this person personally and it was being run through bank accounts or something like that, then I would most likely find it. But if it's just sort of off book, I'm not sure I would find it. But the key thing is, if you're thinking about anything like this, and this also applies to offshoring assets or putting money into cryptocurrency or something like that, is you want to ask yourself, do I need the money, right? So do I need the money to support my lifestyle, which is important because a lot of guys, myself included, when you earn more, you say, oh, I get to go get more things, right?
Yeah.
So when you're earning more, I go, oh, what about, blah, 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 a BMW or whatever, right? Or a nicer house, etc. It's very hard for us as men who are competing to say, I'm going to put all this money in a different bank account and I'm never going to touch it. And I'm perfectly comfortable with my Toyota Camry and I'm okay making $100,000 a year rather than $1 million, which is what I'm really making. And I'll just sit on it. That's very hard.
Yeah.
Very, very, very hard.
Almost impossible. I'm definitely one of those ones. I just keep on buying random stuff that I don't even need. Like just walking past something and I'm like, oh, you know what? That looks really cool. Screw it. Let me spend $3,000 on a watch. And it's like everyone says that women love shopping more than men do. That is bullshit, man. We don't like really going out and shopping. We just want to go get the thing, leave, and then do whatever else. But we're so impulsive. And I think that's one of probably a big reasons why a lot of guys now are they kind of mess up a lot of their life just by having that sort of instant gratification rather than, longer term, setting themselves up better and better and better for a much higher position in life, or at least financially anyway, and sort of just pissing away their funds really. And I mean, because also one idea that I had from a conversation recently was what would happen if you as the man and your wife, let's say that she never actually does go into your finances and doesn't do any research into them or investigation ever. You guys have been married a few years. You're making, let's say, something reasonable, 150K, 200K, and you're spending all of that money. You're spending every cent of it because you're trying to keep that exact lifestyle level up. Now, for whatever reason, let's say that someone's cheating on someone else, and then the divorce happens. What would be the common case, or have you had any cases of that happening? Because I can imagine, especially now with this whole flexing culture and everyone trying to just live the Instagram lifestyle, I can imagine that that's going to be a big thing, and I can probably see that happening quite a bit more. So is that getting more commonplace, and what would happen in that case?
Total and complete catastrophe financially for people like that, completely. And the reason is this, right? Like you've seen, this is a perfect example. They're making $150,000 a year, right? They have a matrimonial home. So assume that they've been paying a mortgage. But what I've seen a lot of people do is that as the housing prices have skyrocketed, especially in Canada where I am right now, they've been pulling out home equity lines of credit. And then they spend the HELOC money to put in renovations, or they go and they take the kids to Disney World or whatever the case may be, right? So what happens when push comes to shove is that when they go to divide the money at the end of the day, nobody can buy the other person out of the house, which means the house is getting sold. it's gone, and there's no equity in it because they've already spent it on bullshit. So these two hypothetical people are going right back to square one. And depending on how contentious the divorce proceedings are going to be, they're going to go negative on legal fees, because it'll be $30,000, $40,000 each just to get through this. Because often, because there's no money, people tend to fight about other things like kids. And when they're fighting about kids, it starts becoming litigation warfare over who has the kids for Christmas this year versus the other year. Or, you know, he dropped off the kids at 7 p.m., but it's supposed to be at 6 p.m. And then they have their lawyer draft a letter and send that off. And it just becomes fees upon fees upon fees. So that hypothetical situation, I know a lot of cases like that. And it's just complete despair. Both parties just get smoked.
Yeah, 100%. And so when it comes to, obviously, the biggest thing that you could do to not be in that position in the first place is, hey, marry a good woman that you love and that you're going to stay with and that you're going to continue to be with for a long time regardless, and build that future together. And for you, I mean, you've got a beautiful place, you've got a beautiful wife, some amazing kids as well, and that you look very, very well after, teaching amazing things. What would your advice be for a young man, let's say early 20s, mid 20s now, to really just set up their romantic future with either the person that they're with now or will be in the future married to? What would your advice be? Because obviously you're somewhat a beacon of hope and light for a lot of guys now in the misery of the modern dating world.
Well, I can't claim to know too much about the modern dating world, at least not on air. But the important parts are this, right? So you want to pick someone who's good for you, which means who respects you and gives you the authority to make decisions for yourself and for your family, right? And you need to live up to that expectation at the end of the day, which means in order for a marriage to be successful and as successful as mine, you need to be masculine and somewhat dominant, not in a bad way, but as a leader, right? And as a leader, you take responsibility, which means the buck stops with you and you have to work your ass off to prove yourself, to your kids, and to your wife. That's where it comes from. And it's a motivation. It's a motivating thing. It's not a negative. When you're looking at a specific woman, you just want somebody who's going to give that reign to you, right? Because your job is to fulfill a certain role, and her job is to help you fulfill that role, right? So there's a support system there that is extremely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of guys, especially now, just the way that things are in the modern dating world is very, very different. We'll talk about it more offline. But it's very, very difficult for a lot of men to even believe or see that no, there are actually genuinely amazing women that want that really want to help and support their man. And
I think most are like that. It's just that the guy isn't living up to the expectations. Women are seed investors. I mean, at the end of the day, they're seed round investors. They're looking at potential as a 20-year-old when they are at or nearing their peak of beauty, and they're looking for potential in people who will support them down the road. So you're looking at them as 20, they're looking at you at 40. And absolutely, if you're not meeting that potential, you're gone.
Mm-hmm. And gone very, very quickly. And, we see this a lot, especially within our sort of inner circle of people. We see this happen quite often. It's not necessarily, I think for men, a lot of men kind of look at a divorce or really anything in life, and they just see it as one sort of pinnacle moment. And it's really not. It's an every single day, and that's sort of really where it gets, I wouldn't say difficult, but a lot of people find it very, very, very difficult to just carry on. You know, you get the rug swept from under you time and time again. The bad business deal that's happened here. You've got someone's now dead or dying in your family. Now you've got to support them as well. It is pretty exhausting, I would say, for a lot of men out there. And for those guys that are getting, just tired, what would you say to them?
I would say buckle up, because life is hard and life is chaotic, and you have to learn to embrace it and become comfortable with it. My life is chaotic. I enjoy it. It takes time to program yourself that way. But if I'm not busy with business or relationships or the kids or family or going to the cottage, what the hell am I doing? It's meant to be chaotic. It's meant to be crazy. It's meant to be exciting. It's meant to keep you up until 2 o'clock in the morning. I go to bed routinely at 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and I get up at 5:30 and I go and I train. And then I come back, I see my kids for a little bit, then they go off to do whatever, and I work. Then they come back at about 5. I spend 2 hours with them, and I'm very careful about blocking that out because I want that time to invest in them. They go to bed, spend some time with my wife, back to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have some kind of a secret? Because I don't know what the hell you do with your skin, because you don't look tired at all. So whatever the cream that is, I think we'll need to either invest in that for sure. But it's certainly that, and a lot of people are looking for order in their life, right? And that order in your life can actually be such a depreciating asset. Sure, there's certain things, as you said, that you need to block out times for certain things. Going to the gym, going and being with the kids, spending at least a couple of hours or an hour or so with your wife. But everything else is really, it's just fluff. So it's either your business and you're busy and you're building, or you're just kind of sat there just twiddling your fingers. Like what is it that you're going to do with your time to focus on X, Y, and Z, but yet not have that organization and that sort of OCD that a lot of guys have about their lives. And the chaos, I think, really proves what kind of a man that person is as well. Because if you can't, and you're unable to function in chaos, when push comes to shove, I know this is an insane example, but let's say push comes to shove, there's actually a genuine problem or a genuine threat to your family, or you're somewhere abroad with your family and something goes really wrong, and that's going to be insanely chaotic. Of course, your woman needs to know that in X, Y, or Z situation, she and your kids are going to be fine. They're going to be fine. They're going to be well taken care of and looked after, and feel that love. Because a lot of people think that the chaos is actually detrimental. Quite the opposite. Because if you don't have chaos in the first place, then you're not doing anything.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people have said that about Trump too, because most of the time when presidents go into the office and then they come out the other end, they look like they've aged like 30 years. And then Trump came out and he looked the same, if not better, after.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people have pointed to the fact that he's led an extremely chaotic life as a baseline, for the fact that he was capable of managing the chaos of a presidency better than most people would be, at least in terms of aging and being able to keep up with that.
Oh, for sure. And he also had that other secret. He was definitely using your cream. So I don't know where he found your secret, but
it's the Trump cream. There's gold flakes in it. And...
gold flakes, and it's made out of the marble, but
Yeah.
Pakistani marble of some crazy variety. But no, it's very true, because and it's also the happiness that you get as well when you sit down and you're like, end of the day, and you finally sit down and you're like, shit, I did all of that. Cool. You know what? I can. It's almost like you're able to sleep with your soul comfortably, right? Because a lot of people struggle to sleep now. I can't struggle to sleep. I just, as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm done. That's it. I'm out. It doesn't matter if it's a sofa, if it's in here in my cinema room, if it's my bed. I'm done. I'm done. The second that my eyes close, that's it. And I can imagine it's pretty similar for you as well.
Definitely.
And what's one of those things for you that you see now that men lack, I guess?
Fortitude. I would think fortitude, standing up for your convictions, right? Because I think a lot of men are falling into the trap of, I don't know if I call it desperation necessarily, but wanting to be liked by somebody. And they're willing to go along with things that men 20 years ago wouldn't have gone along with, let alone 100. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of that more so in the last 2 years. I've seen a lot of it in Canada, where, I mean, shit, I've seen kids on their bicycles wearing N95 masks, but no helmets. And you kind of go, what? What are we doing here, guys? This is ridiculous. You're outside and you're not wearing helmets, which, I didn't wear a helmet really as a kid either, but whatever. But you're wearing a face mask. This is retarded. So I think it's just men being able to take some control over their lives and being able to take some ownership of them. And men have fallen into a weird frame of, it's the woman's house and I have my man cave and I put the sports jerseys on the wall and I fire up the NFL on Sunday and I drink beer and, eat bacon or whatever it is. And that's the definition of manliness. And that's not manly at all. Manliness is spending time with good men, with good friends, with good family, and leading a positive and inspirational life that lifts people up around you. And you're able to establish and maintain wonderful relationships and take responsibility for people who you love. That's manliness. It's not a barbecue.
Yeah. It's never just going and sitting down and grilling, right? It's well, I say that sometimes it can be, but with the right people.
Yeah.
And how have you in your life, how have you sort of been able to find that sort of tribe and the right people? Because that is certainly the most important thing, is having that. I'd call it brotherhood, but it's just more than that. I think it's something that is deeply seeded, and I think it is almost like a spiritual need for men to have that kind of tribe, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably a weird example because I don't really have an online persona. I don't have a Twitter account. I don't have Instagram. I technically, I think I have Facebook, but I haven't been on that in a decade. So who knows? And for me, it's always been a control thing where I'm very careful and cautious with my time and who I spend time around. And I think it must have been drilled into me when I was quite young that you're sort of the total of the 5 closest people to you or something like that.
Yeah.
So I've been very selective with who I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I very actively filter people out if they're just not the right fit for me to spend time with. Right. So that's made my circle of colleagues and friends a lot better because I don't just take anybody into the fold. I just take the ones that I want to, that I genuinely want to spend time with. So that's more real life and online, I've gotten connected up with some people like yourself, where we share a lot of similar ideas and morals and ethics. And connecting up with people like you has been a real treat, because it's great to know that there are people out there who are of similar mindsets and professionals in different fields, not just lawyers, accountants, doctors, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And that's actually a really, really important thing as well, because part of what I see a lot of people doing now, especially young men, and what I see a lot of them doing, or at least being suggested to do, is to become capable in quite literally everything. Which, sure, you can do that. You can be a jack of all trades, but master of none. But there's certain things that I think having people in your tribe that are able to be the expert, be the person, the go-to person for that specific niche or business or wisdom, having that as well, I think, is a crucial part, and being able to sort of admit and know where your place is. Because if I ever had some litigation or some financial accounting needs, I'd be there and I'd be like, I don't know what I don't want to touch this fucking thing. I don't know about it. Ryan, help me out with this, please. And if it was vice versa and you needed, let's say, some sales advice, then it's probably similar, right? And having that reliance on each other as well, I think, is something that I don't see many men doing, for one reason or another. What do you think that reason really is, that so many men don't have that?
I think what you're getting at is an ego problem, where people can't accept that maybe they're not the best at something, even though they've worked hard at it. I work hard at the gym, but it doesn't make me the top Muay Thai fighter by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be closer to the bottom of the pool for that one. But it's the acceptance of knowing that you're not the top person here. And if you have the top person in your surroundings, that's going to be extremely helpful. And one way of getting to know some of the top people is invariably going to be online, because, I mean, let's face it, if you're living in a city that has 100,000 people, what are the odds the top Muay Thai striker in North America or the world is going to be living in that town and willing to give you advice on something? Zero, right? Then do that for everything else that you could find helpful: weightlifting, business, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, IT, whatever, right? You're only going to be drawing from a pool of mediocrity if you stick to your geographic location and boundary. But if you expand out, the quality is going to invariably increase if you can vet for it, which means you need to know a little bit about these things.
Yeah. And how would you vet people in general? Because I know that obviously a lot of what you do is literally vetting people and looking at them, looking at their history. So what would be some sort of top 3 tips for just your average day Joe, just to go and make sure that actually the people that I'm with, you're kind of putting them through the right filter to see if a little bit more of who they are as a personality, and seeing it sooner rather than later? So what would those sort of top 3 be?
Top 3. Step 1, the easiest way to accelerate your life and your competency level is going to become an entrepreneur, right? Which means you're going to need to get a baseline level of knowledge in a variety of fields, like money, like marketing, like bookkeeping, like online website development, whatever, right? So you'll get to know at least a little bit about different fields just by becoming an entrepreneur. And you're going to learn most likely the most about yourself and how you manage chaos and responsibility. So that would be part 1. Part 2 is run basically soft interviews on people when you're having conversations. So if I'm conversing with you, This is actually no different than how I talk to people on a day-to-day basis. I just talk to them. I don't look at my phone.
Yeah.
I don't fiddle around with my computer or bullshit. I literally want to engage with you. I'm not here to be distracted. I want to talk to you. I'm going to ask you some questions, and then I'm going to consider your answers and see how you respond, right? And if you're able to keep up with me, then we're in. I love you. And if you can't, then we're out. That's it. But it's engaging in people. If you can't engage in people and actually take interest in what they're saying, are you really going to be that interesting a person to begin with? Because you're not going to learn anything.
Yeah. And being interesting, I think is really, I think it's almost a cheat code to life, right? Like being able to not necessarily force it in any way, but I think that really to become interesting, you just need to live an interesting life, and it has to be a life well lived. And part of that is going to be making sure that, you know, whether it's your wife, whether it's your friends, you have to make sure that you're vetting people one way or the other, and doing that and seeing things earlier rather than later. That's going to save you years of pain, misery, suffering, and really going down that sort of deep, dark abyss that so many people are in, because they just didn't filter out the people. And even still, a lot of people, and I can imagine a fair few of your cases, especially in court, would have been this, where there's been so many red flags. Oh yeah, of course I should have seen this coming, but then they just kind of ignored it. Have you ever sort of had that experience yourself in your life where you've trusted someone, you've seen the train is coming to the station, but you're like, well, all right, I'll change platform?
Yeah. I had one. I've alluded to this with you before, so it's great that you've brought this up. I've often said, and I've said this to you, that you need, if you have a wife or a significant other, use them as assets and use them as people who can vet, specifically guys, right? Because women are better at vetting guys than men, just naturally, because they're born to do it. It's genetically sort of programmed in to be, for them to see people in 10 years, 20 years down the line. So the story goes like this. I'm flying to South Africa on Emirates. This would have been 5 or 6 years ago. And I've got, you know, my phone hooked up or whatever, and I get a note from somebody who they went to my high school at the time. And he said, hey, I'm doing blah, blah, blah. I'd like to do business with you. You know, we can kind of go through a partnership and sort it out. I said, cool, let's talk about it. I'm going away. I'm actually on the plane right now. So I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. This guy follows up like the next day saying, what do you think? I go, okay, but, you know, geez. Cut. I just had something fall. So I'm going away. This guy contacts me the next day, and I kind of go, oh, geez, okay, well, I'm still going away, so let me get back to you. I go through the vacation. He bugs me a few more times over a 2-week period. I get home, and I've been corresponding with my wife about this. And I said, you know what, let's go meet the guy. We'll have lunch. And we come home. She says, loser. And I'm like, but the idea is good. The idea was really good. But I know you're saying loser, but I think, you know, I think we can make it work. We'll make it work. Let's do it. Let's do it, baby. And push comes to shove, you know, a year later, we spend a ton of time, a ton of energy, and we made a little bit of money on this, but the amount of energy draining and time sapping that came out of this was brutal, like just painful. And then we just said, no, we're out. Finally, I came to my senses, and she's like, my wife said, yeah, I told you that a year ago. I'm like, yeah, I know.
So I told you he was,
but I wanted to see.
That's true. It's like magpie syndrome. You're like, oh, there's this, it looks kind of shiny. Let's see, let's test it out.
Yeah.
Whereas a woman could be like, yeah, you want a spoon, that's aluminium. So don't go and go after that. And you go after it and then you find out. And then you're like, oh shit. Yeah, she was right. She was right.
Yeah.
And women are amazingly good at vetting because I mean, I certainly agree. It's looking down the 40 years down the line to see, where us, especially as younger men, are going to be. But I think it's also there's like an aspect, I think, to safety as well. And it's like
Yeah.
my girlfriend and I, we were out the other day, and a little bit about the story. And this huge guy comes up, just a really good friend of mine, but he's got tattoos all over his head. He's like 6'4", 5", maybe. Huge tank, just comes up to me, and he's just like, "Hey, come here. Let's have a quick conversation." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sure, no problem." Kiss my girl, kiss her on the forehead. I'm like, "All right, baby, be back in a second." And me and him were just sitting there chatting for 2-3 minutes, nothing too long. But I come back and she was terrified though. And she was like, "Are you okay?" It's blah blah. And I think a lot of women really just have that innate knowing of, okay, I'm kind of going to be in danger, but rather than just it being like a physical thing that us men can see, which is very obvious, right? It's in front of us. No, with them, it's also like a mental and a personality game as well. It's like they can see, oh, hold on a second, this guy's, yeah, no, I can't just put my finger on it, but there's something I don't like about this guy. And then you're like, no, he's fine. I've known him for a couple of months. A couple of months down the line, you're like, yeah, baby, you were right. He was a fucking arsehole.
Yeah, they can sense it. There's a sixth sense there that they have, where they pick up on these things better than we do as guys. We're just not attuned to that. We're more tuned to like physical risk and probably monetary risk. I think we understand the complexity and nature of it a little bit better. But women, when it comes to just nailing guys in terms of, loser versus winner, dangerous versus safe, yeah, they get it. Especially the more attractive women who I've had experience with, they have that just totally locked in and dialed. They see it from 100 miles away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason for that is really it boils down to just them having more experience and more guys approaching them. So and really it's the same with everything in life. The more experience that you have, the more that you're going to see those red flags. And when you do see those red flags, trust them. And if it's someone else who's coming to you saying that you trust and love, especially, that's coming to you and saying, "Hey, he's a fucking loser," maybe just give it a little bit more thought. I think is definitely a wise choice for a lot of men. And so for you as well, I mean, obviously, I know that you're not online, but I know that you do some. You're on the board of, I forgot what it was called, a brain injuries clinic a while ago, or is that still a?
Yeah, a while ago. Yeah, I used to be. I did a fair bit of not-for-profit work. I've had a few concussions myself, so it's a bit of a passion project for me when I was doing it. But then I got too busy, so I stepped down. I think it was about a year ago. I forgot.
Okay, cool. And so online wise, is there any way that anyone can find you to give you a follow or look at your advice, or is it just fading into the background of just real life again after this?
I don't know. Should I do like an online profile, you think, Michael?
I think there's a lot of people that I think would say that that would be an awesome idea and that would certainly follow you. And for you guys, definitely comment down in the comment section below if you guys want that. And if so, we'll make it happen for Ryan. We'll set him up a couple of accounts and get him talking to more and more people.
I'll have to come up with some ideas then, if that's the case.
Well, you know where I am anyway. I'll definitely help you with it. But one way or the other, this has been a great chat. And I'm definitely keen to find out, as I'm pretty sure everyone else is, a lot more about you, a lot more about the history and future and plans and everything else. So we'll sit down and have hopefully another one of these in very soon.
I would love to, and I think we can really pick up steam as things move along here. So we're gonna have a lot more to talk about next time.
Oh, we're saving the juicy stuff around too. This is what I love about this.
Absolutely. Why? I mean, this is the appetizer.
Really appreciate the talk and the time. And obviously, we'll have you on again, and we will see down in the comments section where people want to see you and on which kind of social media. But genuinely appreciate the time, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real treat. I appreciate it.